What's going on, y'all? On One Car is back again with another car review, and today I got something real special for y'all. I'm actually not even in America, I'm in Turkey, and what better way to show you what the Europeans have than the Renault Clio with a 1-liter 3-cylinder engine. So the Renault Clio is made by the French car brand Renault, and they're based out of Paris, obviously. The Renault Clio goes back to 1990, and it was actually the car that saved Renault from bankruptcy. And because it is such a small, affordable car, it was one of the best and most sold cars in Europe. It actually won Car of the Year twice, both in 1991 and in 2006. And this is actually the 5th generation car. So what's so special about this Clio specifically is that it has the 1-liter 3-cylinder with 67 horsepower and 70 pound-feet of torque. This car also has 0 options. It doesn't even have a screen. It just has a regular radio head unit. And it also has the 5-speed transmission. Now, the reason why I rented this specific car is because I really wanted to get a feel for what Europeans had to drive. In America, we have all these big liter engines. My M6 had a 5-liter 10-cylinder engine. This is a 1-liter 3-cylinder engine. I'm just kidding. I rented this because it was the cheapest option and I just wanted to get around. And I did not realize that it was going to be this slow. In fact, this car is tremendously and dangerously slow. But before I get to the performance, I just wanted to go over this car's design. It actually doesn't look that bad, honestly. It has a nice front end. It's very Golf reminiscent, especially with the front end, these new LED lights. The Golf is actually its biggest competitor. But I like how the front swoops around. The front grille, everything is functional, which is surprising for a car like this. Usually there's a bunch of plastic, but all the grills work and you can see inside to the little engine. Moving around to the back, I also like the rear tail light design. Everything is very nicely updated for a car like this. This car only starts off at 18,000 US and you really can't expect much for the price. And to be honest, it doesn't look too bad. As you can already assume with cars in this segment, this car has really tiny wheels. 15-inch wheels with 185 tires. These are like the size of like a side-by-side tire. Very tiny, but again, this is supposed to be cost efficient and economic. Oh, there's a dent there. There's really not too much going on with this car with its basic design cues. Everything is very flowy and nice. It's just what you expect from a car like this, nothing too fancy. The only thing that stands out is this antenna. It is huge and is in the middle and it just commands attention. It's huge. I'm like, what's the point of having an antenna this big? It really should be this tall, honestly. So one thing I really like about this car is its size. It's super tiny, and here in Turkey, you actually need a small car to be able to drive around in the streets. Most of the streets can barely fit 2 cars passing on either side when they're both this size. So imagine if you had something bigger, like if you had like a Tahoe or a Suburban, you really couldn't drive around in Turkey. You really need a small car because if you have anything bigger, people are gonna hit it. People get real close. In fact, just today, some guy rolled back and bumped this car. Isn't that crazy? I was like, yo, they really don't care. Cars are just whatever here. It's crazy. I haven't seen a single M or AMG since I've been in Turkey. Everything has been a 1 or 2-liter engine. This one doesn't even have a turbo. If you have a 2-liter turbo engine, you're a big ballin' in Turkey. But you heard me talk about the 3-cylinder engine. Let's pop the hood and see what it looks like, because it is hilariously small. So what we have here is a 1-liter 3-cylinder engine making 67 horsepower and 70 pound-feet of torque. As you can see, this engine is so tiny, it just literally rocks in there because it's 3 cylinders, it's just off balance. This thing is just too slow for the road. Honestly, I don't even know how people buy this. I don't even know how people drive this every day. Because when I drove it here, I drove all the way from Bursa to Bodrum, which is about 5 hours. Like, I was losing speed on the hills. I had a downshift. This thing only revs out to 6,000 RPM, so I'm maxing it out. Going up a hill, I have to downshift. Every time I downshift, it red lines again. It's just, you have to redline this car in Florida wherever you go. It's ridiculous. But to be honest, that makes it kind of fun. You really get to ring out the car. It's a 3-cylinder, so it really doesn't sound like anything. But you can see all around the engine. Straight to the ground. This engine is about the size of like a bag of kitty litter. I don't even know what else to compare it to. It's like a bag of rice. That's how big the engine is. It's insane that they would put this in a production car for the highway. Before we get to the interior, let me do a quick sound check, see what this 3-cylinder 1-liter engine sounds like. Moving on to the interior of the vehicle, we can see that although I'm 6'4", I do have kind of a good amount of space in here. It's not too bad. The seat can get pretty low, which gives it a good sporty driving position. Again, the only thing fun about this car is the 5-speed manual. With a reverse lockout, you can't go straight from fifth to reverse, obviously. But this car is not too bad for not having a single option. Steering wheel is nice. We got cruise control options on the left. We have the center screen controls on the right. On the left, also on the dashboard, we have the brightness and I guess the brightness of your headlights. Not too sure. Oh, the adjustment. You can actually adjust the angle of your headlights with the switch on the dash. Very nice, very French. In the middle, we have the most boring center console ever. Not even a screen, just a place for digital numbers. I don't even know how it works. It's all in Turkish, so I don't understand anything. Moving down below, we have 3 options. We have the button to turn auto stop start off. We have the hazards, and we have interior locks. All the other switches are left blank, and it looks absolutely great. Below that, we have the HVAC controls. Everything you'd ever need HVAC. No climate control here. All we have is temperature, fan speed, and direction. As I mentioned before, 5-speed manual. This has to be one of the numbest shifters I've ever used. You can't really feel what gear it's in. If it's in that area, it's there, but really no engagement, not crisp at all. It is what it is. It's meant to be easily driven, and it drives very easy. The clutch, super light clutch. You really don't even know where the engagement point is. You just gotta make sure it doesn't stall, which I have done a lot actually. This car stalls a lot. It has no power. You have to rev it to like 2.5 grand to get it moving on a hill. And in Turkey, there are a ton of hills. Emergency brake in the middle, nothing too crazy. Everything is plastic. Not much going on here. The center vents are kind of cool. You have a single faux vent with adjustable parts. 2 for the driver, 2 for the passenger. Again, nothing fancy at all. This car has 0 options. It's just something to get around in. Moving on to the rear seat, we do have manual windows. The front are powered, but the rear are manual. As I said, 0 options. There's not even any locks in the back seat. The only lock is that center lock in the center console. This is where I usually have the seat. I'm gonna try to see if I can fit behind where I'd sit. As you can see, I can't even put my heels on the ground. This is not an ideal position to be riding in, but I do have plenty of headroom. If a normal sized person was sitting in the seat in front of me, I'd probably be able to fit back here. I'm looking at the passenger side and there's plenty of room. Not too bad. Not too bad. The trunk space isn't too bad as well. We have a nice tall area to fit boxes in and whatnot. And you can also fold the seats flat if you need extra space. So that's enough about the Clio's design and performance figures. Let's get on the road and see how 67 horsepower actually feels to drive. So what's it like to drive a Renault Clio with a 3-cylinder, 1-liter engine in Turkey? It's actually kind of nice. You don't drive as fast as in America. People usually take their time. Like, no one gets angry. There's no road rage here in Turkey. Everyone just driving. It is what it is. Like, if you have road rage here, you're crazy. Coming up to this intersection's always hard. Oh, I can't see. Oh, yeah, there's a car coming. And we're off. Oh man, this car is slow. It's funny because I was traveling with my mom and you can actually tell the weight difference. Not saying you're fat, Mom, but that's how weak this car is. So now we're just cruising, going up a hill. As you can see, I'm flooring it, losing speed, 69, 70. I'm foot to the floor right now in 5th gear, 2,000 RPMs going 70 kilometers an hour. So what is the car like to drive in terms of driving dynamics? I really enjoy this car. I think that the steering is really tight. The chassis is nice. It's just a good feeling car to drive. Oh, see, in Turkey, people come up behind you fast and flash their lights. Of course, it's a BMW. The only thing I really have to compare this car to is a Corolla, because that's the only slow car I've driven. And this car is about half as slow as the Corolla. 67 horsepower is not much at all, but again, I do enjoy driving this car. The steering is really nice. The chassis is actually pretty stiff from what it is. The Corolla is really loose compared to this. This is tight, steering is tight. If this car had a really big, powerful engine, I think this car would actually be a lot of fun to drive. There's not much body roll, surprisingly. As you can see, the beautiful views behind me. If you ever get the chance to visit Turkey, I highly suggest you do. Visit every part of the country. There's lots of different parts, just like the United States. They got the beach, they got the mountains, they got skiing, all sorts of weather. You get to experience all 4 seasons. Shifter feel is terrible, clutch feel is terrible. There's no engagement point. It just is what it is when you're driving this car. Not really too much to complain about though. It's like 67 horsepower. It's a manual. It's not really gonna feel that nice. You can't expect anything out of this car. That's the best part about it. This car just does what it's supposed to do. Drive slow, take you from point A to point B slowly, be cheap, have no options. It's comfortable. As I mentioned earlier, I drove this car for 5 hours on the highway and it was fine. Bumps, handles well. Once you're at speed, it carries speed fine. The wind kind of tosses it a little bit because it's a really light, small car. But again, that's just what comes with the territory when you're buying a 3-cylinder, 1-liter Renault Clio. So we're driving around here in the Renault Clio's natural habitat, some tiny city streets. We're actually at this place called Gumbet Beach, which is in Bodrum, kind of across the water from Greece. And this town looks a lot like Santorini in terms of all the white buildings and all the hills. It's pretty nice. As I mentioned before, this car does have really nice dynamics. I think that's due to the fact that it's new. You can see pulling over to the side. Because people in Turkey like to park wherever they want. It's kind of ridiculous. As I said, as you can see in the background a little bit, just whipping it through the hills of Gumbet Beach. This place is like where all the Europeans that would like to go to Turkey come. Super whitewashed. Everything here is very European. In fact, the main currency that they use here is the euro, which is weird. Every time we ask for stuff in lira or in dollars, they're like really confused. They're like, what are you guys doing here? Turkish people in general aren't used to seeing that many Americans. Not many Americans like coming to Turkey. It is what it is. But yeah, back to this car. I think I beat a dead horse at this point. There is really nothing else to say about this machine. It does everything you ask it to do. It's not fast by any means. You floor it wherever you go. But that just gives it the character. This car fits perfectly in Turkey. Perfectly sized. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this car is actually produced in Turkey. This is the first Renault produced in Turkey, and actually was produced in the town where I picked it up from, Bursa. This car is right at home. That about wraps up my review of the 3-cylinder 1-liter Renault Clio. If you have any other cars you want me to review or cars you want me to do buying guides for, just leave them down in the comment section below and I'll be sure to get back to you. But again, no matter what country you're in, remember, be safe and have a good one.